Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Fintech Talks, where we break down different concepts and ideas that we hear throughout the fintech, finance, technology sector, and all tied back to workforce and the future of work. Since we are representing the Georgia FinTech Academy and helping develop that next level of talent for the fintech and payments industries. My name is Laura Gibson-Lamothe, and I'm the executive director of the program, and I'm excited to have the conversation we're having today around AI. We have a special guest today, Billy Harbinson, who represents Go Studio, and we'll hear a little bit about him in regards to his background, and we'll go through the topic today, helping you make sense of some of the things that I think we're all hearing from the industry. I think I coined the buzziest word in the industry right now, which is AI. AI means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I I want to say grew up, but I matured in the fintech and payment space, being very much familiar with how AI and artificial intelligence and machine learning was being leveraged in the industry for fraud and risk management. And that was my exposure maybe about 10, 15 years ago. And it's now evolved to where we're talking about a whole flurry of use cases, a whole new set of tools being developed that creates access to the everyday commoner, I call it, in regards to how we're using and leveraging AI. And there's been a lot of talk about this, and you have to be, as they say, hiding under a rock to not have heard AI probably every day in some capacities. To kind of demystify some of this and some of what I'm talking about today, Billy is a experienced professional. I have interacted with him on several different instances in regards to his ability to provide thought leadership in the industry. He also is an advocate who's very passionate about working with next gen and has volunteered his time and representing the organization that he represents, the skill sets and resources that they already offer within the industry to students and helping them develop innovation skills. And so really grateful for you, Billy, to offer your time today to spend a little bit of focus on demystifying some of the AI topics we're planning to cover today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So before we get started, Billy, can you just give us a little bit of an overview of your background and your work at Go Studio?
Sure. So I'm Billy Harbinson, Director of Innovation at Go Studio. Go Studio is InComm Payments in-house innovation center. We are here to be publicly innovative for our company. Our portfolio consists of three main components: our emerging tech research, which is largely what we're here to talk about today; our workshops, which is how we take our innovation practice, our frameworks, our experiences, and help our customers, both internal and external, solve hard problems. We do a ton of this kind of work, consultant level work, where we examine a problem and unpack all the components of the problem, and then use emerging technologies and experience design to help solve problems. And the third piece of our portfolio is our public outreach. I'm here today having a wonderful conversation with the Georgia FinTech Academy, and we've got public events we'll talk about a little bit later. But those are the three main components of what we do at Go Studio: is our emerging tech research, our workshops, and our outreach.
It's fascinating just thinking about how you're helping companies address and solve problems. I mean, thinking of a big one, we started off this conversation with an introduction where I highlighted that everyone's talking about AI. I want to kind of just start off with demystifying the buzzwords. So when we talk about AI, you also hear agentic AI.
Mhm.
I want to kind of hear from you what it is and why is it the next evolution, beyond just chat based tools that we're kind of hearing and seeing out in the industry.
So, agentic AI, if we'll back up just a bit, AI is just software. And we have placed an incredible amount of importance on that term as a culture. But at the end of the day, it's just software that was programmed to do one thing very, very well. We use AI in place of intelligence, but it is just software that has been programmed. So it is not purely intelligent. There are parameters, there are ways that it is good at what it does and ways that it's not. Agentic is a series of AI that you have prompted. So if I go to ChatGPT or Copilot or Claude and type in my prompts right now, it's going to be a in the moment, real time conversation with that chatbot. An agent is simply just preloading a series of prompts and data and directives into Claude, into ChatGPT, into Copilot, and then having it auto recognize and auto consume those contexts in the moment when we ask it to do something. Again, it's not magic, it's just software. And so agents are able to use what you told it before to run its execution right now.
What do you think are some of the real world implications? What are some of the ways that agentic AI is being applied today?
Yeah, so I think agents are the first evolution of generative AI. It's a simple evolution. If I need to sit with ChatGPT or Copilot and tell it what to do over and over and over, I can automate that. I can store those as a series of preloaded instructions. So, for instance, I need to do a particular type of research fairly regularly. I answer a discrete set of questions, and I want my AI to be able to answer those questions in the same way every time. I don't want to have to provide them every time I need to do this research. So I created a simple agent. Here, agent, we're going to research this type of thing. I need you to answer these 18 questions. Here they are. And when I pull up this agent, I want you to answer these questions to the best of your ability. And I often will tell it not to guess. I'll say, I don't want your guesses. I want you to tell me you don't know if you don't. Because then I am able to then fill in the gaps and use the human deductive reasoning power that we have. We're not using AI to eliminate our creativity and problem solving. And you'll hear me say this a lot. We're using AI to help give us the first baby step or two. So then the human power that we all have kicks in. Eliminate the mundane and jump to the thing that humans are good at: problem solving, reasoning, deductive reasoning. Shift myself into gear where I can provide value and not spin my wheels just copying, pasting paragraphs from the internet.
You also mentioned large language models earlier, and I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion between large language models, aka LLM, and maybe where agentic AI comes in. Could you kind of clarify the difference between just generally large language models and what we're talking about with agentic AI?
So a lot of the modern AI is powered by a large language model, including the agentic trends that we're seeing today. Large language models are built to understand and replicate language. It understands when I ask for information about quantum computing. It doesn't know anything about quantum computing, but it knows how to arrange words in a way that is statistically significant to the topic. So if I am asking to do financial analysis on a topic, or if I'm asking to do experience analysis on a consumer base, it knows the context of that well enough to arrange words to get me started. I will often use AI, including the agents that we've built, to help me prepare for an interview. If I need to interview a customer, I'll say, I'm interviewing a customer on this topic. Give me 20 questions to ask. It understands that I'm asking it for questions. It understands I'm asking it for questions in a certain context or topic. That's the LLM. That's what it's doing. But we're wrapping all these instructions around the LLM to be able to have an agent do something for us. In this case, create me a list of questions, and then I will use those questions to dig deeper on the topic that I need to research.
As you were describing that, I was visualizing myself and my journey with AI. I started off as I would like to say, early adopter. When I had access to ChatGPT, I was leveraging it. I was giving it some basic level prompts. There are a lot of things that I do, obviously not being a publicly traded company or a financial services organization, that I could do just to help me with things like my newsletter. We have a newsletter where we're constantly looking for the hottest news in the industry, and we're compiling to see what's relevant for the Atlanta market. And so I was leveraging ChatGPT, just basic to be able to collect a lot of that data and then compile it. But then when I switched to ChatGPT's Agentic solution, I'm now seeing in real time a window in which it's working to do not only the same thing, but provide more context and color on top of what I used to previously give it as a prompt. Is that kind of aligned with what you're talking about or illustrating a
Mhm.
little bit of what you're talking about? Yeah.
It is, because what you've done with your agent is you've given it the context in which it should always operate.
Yeah.
And that, in most technology, is the key to making it feel human, is the context, awareness of context and what I'm trying to do. If I'm sitting down and I just have a blank Google sheet in front of me and I type in Google, like, it's going to give me the topmost ranked hits for my Google query without context. Except now it could do location and it could do time of day. And Google has, over 20, 30 years, created a lot of context around your search query that you expect. The early versions of ChatGPT, the early versions of Claude were devoid of context. It was just giving you words. Now they're starting to bake some of that context back in, time of day, location, and now you can add that specifically to your agent. Hey, agent, I always want you to act like a financial analyst when you respond to me. And then it forms its responses, it forms its patterns to fit that persona, to fit that mold. And that really does make it feel more human than it actually is. But it helps us to create content and to create thought without having to edit it further down the line. If it comes out like a financial analyst would, if it comes out like a startup analyst would write, then that helps us. We're already 20% of the way there. We're already 30% of the way there. And now we can take it and add our human touch to it.
That's fascinating. I love that evolution because, to your point, I spent a lot more time taking what I got from ChatGPT to create the final product than I have to now with the agentic AI, layer in this process. And now I've automated a lot of it. So it takes out some of the operational mundane tasks, I like to say. And
That's right.
and really I've delegated that activity to agentic AI. So yeah, that pattern resonates with me. One thing that you mentioned in our notes preparing for this talk was large action models. I had to Google this because I have never heard of that term. So can you explain that for our audience and talk about what makes that different from large language models, LLMs, that we talked about earlier?
Well, first, large action models is a really interesting example of how fast this industry is moving. Like 6 months ago, that was the hot new topic. And there's still a lot on large action models, but I think that term is actually starting to break down into subcategories, and agentic is one of the things that is kind of being drugged through from chat-based LLMs to agent-based LLMs to action. And so this industry is moving incredibly fast. If we had this conversation again in 6 months, we're going to have entirely new terms. And some of the things we're talking about today are going to feel like they happened 5 years ago. But a large action model is really the interesting next evolution of chat-based AI to agent to taking action on my behalf. So if we roll back 2 years, we open up ChatGPT, I have to give it everything I want it to do. I have to tell it, all right, I need you to act like a financial analyst. I need you to act like this persona. And here is what I want you to do. Here's the question I'm asking. Here's the content I need you to create. I need you to format it in this way. And I need it done with highlights or emojis or whatever. Having to in the moment prescribe everything I want it to do. An agent, like we've been talking, allows you to pre-position a lot of that context and persona instruction to where I can just ask the basic prompt and the rest of it is assumed and loaded. I still have to give it a ton of very specific instructions behind the scene for the agent to perform all the things I need it to do. The next evolution of all of this is the large action model, whether or not it's ultimately called a LAM or not, to where I don't have to give all those hyper specific instructions. I can give vague directions. Like if I'm setting up a workshop, which we talked about a few minutes ago, and I've sent an invitation for the workshop to 15 people, I should be able to tell in the large action model, hey, I need to do the lunch order.
Hmm.
And that's it. And so it looks at my calendar invitation, it emails the people who haven't responded, requesting a response. It emails the people who have responded, asking for their lunch preference. It summarizes that lunch order and sends me an email with the summary. And I can say, cool, send that off to Chipotle or send it off to the sandwich place. And it's doing all that based on the context and intent of my question. And that's really the key, is the action models understand my context and intent without me having to specify what I'm looking for. A really fun example that I've been playing with outside of work. I was at a conference on AI. It's a workshop really 2 or 3 weeks ago at one of the big tech companies downtown. And there were about 30 people in the room. And they went around the room and asked each of us as an icebreaker, what is one thing you wish AI could do for you? And of the 30 people in the room, 6 or 7 said groceries and meal planning, which is a really significant number for the number of people in that room. And so I'm thinking about this, and yeah, there's absolutely a way. The technologies aren't mature enough to do this yet. But if I've got 2 adult kids who are home from college, I've got 1 kid that's in high school, we have a very, very busy life. I could say, look at my calendar and make my meal plan. And so it would look at the calendar, it would decide who's going to be home on what night. It would create a meal plan based on the people that are home. One of the people in our household is dairy free, so we could have mac and cheese on the night she's not home. It could arrange our meal plan, send the grocery order off for pickup to delivery. And I don't have to do any of that. But bonus points, bonus round, it could base the meal plan and the grocery order around what's on sale by looking at the sales papers and the websites. And ChatGPT has been able to do this for a long time, where you can take a photo of like your weekly Aldi paper or your weekly Food Lion or Kroger paper, and it'll pull out the things that are on sale and create a meal plan for you. So why do I need to be involved in this process? A large action model would understand my context, understand my intent, then be able to send all of these actions to the places where they can be done something with. All right, check my calendar, check the sale papers, check when did we last have pasta? We don't want to have it 3 nights in a row. It can do all of these things for me, and I don't have to pre-instruct it the way I do with an agent now. So I think this is the next evolution of what we're going to be working with in 2 years, are these large action models that you can say, just order me a pizza. And it's learned that you like to order from the place down the corner, but if the place down the corner is not open, it'll order it at your next favorite place. You don't have to specify those things. There are some really, really powerful agent building tools out there right now. Make is one, Innate is one. They're really very, very powerful, but you still have to specify all the things you want it to do in the context and intent of what you're invoking when you call that automation. Large action models will create a lot of that context and intent understanding in the moment, and you don't have to pre-build it.
I first heard of Agentic AI through creators and social media influencers, and they were pulling up screens and showing how they created AI agents to do a little bit what you're talking about in the scenario of groceries and meal prep, but they were leveraging it to, I think, kind of like scrub some of these social media platforms for where there are trends, like and where there are things that have gone viral and how they can translate that into their domain or
Mm-hmm.
angle. And when I saw it being developed with some of the tools that you actually mentioned for agentic AI, it very much felt code heavy. It was very technical in the way that they're setting up these AI agents. I even went down the rabbit hole of trying to use an AI agent to develop AI agents, which is a little bit difficult. If anyone has a solution, let me know. But what you're talking about is a whole nother level of efficiency that I think I'm excited about when people are, a little bit fearful of AI and what AI means. I also see some of the efficiencies and the benefits to just day to day life that come with it. And I'm not necessarily sure how feel or have heard, especially coming out of that workshop, which sounds fascinating. What is the sense from people in general on AI and how it's evolving and all of these use cases that you're kind of depicting it being utilized?
So I'm going to jump on my old man soapbox for a moment. I think that this is natural evolution of business, right? The new tool we're all always going to be afraid of a little bit until it just becomes the way we do business. When the internet first started becoming a thing you could do at work, and one of my former employers, every time I hit a web page, I had to type in my domain credentials because they didn't want us wasting time with the internet, right? But then it becomes, how do you do business? Then the advent of smartphones and the iPhone in 2007, 2008, that's how we do business today. And AI is starting to leak into every aspect of our lives in one way or another. And it is how a lot of companies are doing business. I got an email from my cell phone provider literally this morning, and they were touting their brand new AI powered customer service agent. I didn't need to know that. They didn't need to send me an email about that, but they did, because they feel like that's innovation. They feel like it's innovative. They feel like they need to be on the forefront of talking about this wave. And if it can help me do things, awesome, I will use it, but I still need it to solve my problems. I don't care about the Chrome. I don't care about the high tech. I need to solve problems when I interface with their customer service bot. Fortunately, this current wave of AI is incredibly powerful at those types of customer service tasks, those types of data manipulation and data retrieval tasks. It's really good at that. But I do think that there is an aspect of this that becomes, over the next 10 years, business as usual. And we start with AI in a lot of ways that right now we're having to bolt on. Like if we want to build an agent, we go do that. We have to consciously go do that. But there are going to be systems where we do a thing and it says, would you like to save this as an agent? Yeah, yes. And then it saves those prompts and that flow for you for later, instead of you having to go specify it. And then in the future, that agent just happens in the moment. You don't even have to think about it. So there is an evolution of this. And I know it's really fun to think about and really fun to imagine what this is going to look like in 2, 5, and 10 years. But yeah, we're headed down a business as usual path. We're just not there yet.
Well, and speaking of not there yet, I think because, the industry that we work in financial services is so heavily regulated, it's in the terms of what we're talking about. Obviously, I started off mentioning AI and machine learning leveraged in fraud and risk management. And that's one area where the industry has definitely adopted artificial intelligence in some way. But for the things that we're talking about, LLMs, LAMs, you know, just generative AI in general, and then now agentic AI. What do you think that means? First of all, I guess why does it matter for the financial services industry? If you could project the future or depict what happens in the future, how do you think that could evolve?
So I think for financial services and literally every other industry, I think every company is a tech company now. They may go to market with a financial product or with a real estate product or with a retail product, but I think every company is a technology company, and any company that thinks they're not a technology company is fooling themselves. They have to interface with their customers and with their partners and with their suppliers through technology. Every company is a technology company. AI is where technology is headed now, full stop. And so for financial services and many other industries, most other industries, AI is going to show up at your doorstep and be part of what you do. I think part of our framework here, part of the work we do at Go Studio, is futures work. We look at a 10-year time horizon when we build our futures, our scenarios. We don't like the word predict, but what we do in our futures work is look at plausible and possible scenarios based on the trajectory of things that are happening today. So you asked me to think about the future. We're thinking about how AI is going to transform every aspect of business, every aspect of a customer journey, every aspect of the customer expectation, every aspect of how data is managed over the next 2, 5, 10 years. And so when we think about a 10-year future of how AI has transformed a consumer base or transformed a market, it's incredibly powerful to think about all the incredible new things that our customers can do, that our back-end systems can do, that our employees can do, simply because they've got new tools at their disposal. And some of the scenarios that we're thinking about for a 10-year future of AI really are disruptive in both good and bad ways, because the paradigm shifts are gargantuan. It's, you think about a world where you don't need to go to the grocery store anymore. The grocery example we just talked about, that it's doing most of that work that I don't really want to do. My family doesn't want to do that. And so I'm able to offload agents and action models to do some of the business as usual in my life. and then how companies are going to have to transform to meet me where I'm going to be, meet my kids where they are as they grow up and get into the job market as AI natives. Like my 15-year-old uses AI as her first stop to get answers to questions. Then we talk about that. It's not a search engine. You shouldn't use it that way, but they are AI natives. We were digital natives, right? The generation after me, digital natives, but I professionally grew up on the internet. They're growing up in an AI industry. So how do we as companies and industries adopt and transform ourselves to meet those customers where they want to be in 10 years? It's such a fascinating thought experiment and both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
Mm. Well, it's a good segue into my next question, which is, how do you see these tools changing, jobs and roles in the industry? You first mentioned kind of giving advice to your daughter about not leveraging, you know, um, you know, AI for as a search, process in engine, and there's risks associated with that. I think the risks are abound, which I think it's helpful to educate, I think, general users on some of these limitations. I mean, we can go down the whole rabbit hole of ethical AI and responsible AI in general, but just thinking about how it could impact the workforce first. What is your opinion on that for our student audience who's listening in? What is the expectation, I think, for that generation who is coming up AI native and digitally native? And what do you think that means for them in the terms of how they pursue their career journeys?
I saw a thing on LinkedIn the other day, maybe 2 days ago, where there's a lawyer talking about how a senior associate at his firm said AI is good enough to replace the years 1 through 3 associates at our firm. Like we should look into that. And I just stopped and I pondered, I was like, okay, well, if it's going to replace the 1 through 3 year associates, how do you get to year 4? And that's the gap, I think, is that, yes, okay, it can do some of the low hanging, menial, mundane things that our entry level employees are doing, but it's wrong often enough that somebody still has to go double check it, right? And so you've got a situation in that example, and he went on to talk about how they tried it and then they just spent a bunch of time and money trying to fix the things that it did wrong. Well, because there's still human reasoning and human cognition that needs to be engaged. AI is really good at getting you about 20% of the way there, but I would never let it do anything for me that replaced my creativity. I would not outsource my creativity to it. I work in a creative part of the industry, no doubt, but even when I was working in engineering and programming and doing the more IT like things, there was automation. And what I would use the automation for is to free me up to do the things that I'm good at. Like I don't need to sit here and watch this installer run across 50 machines when I'm patching or later in my life. I don't need to summarize this 50-page instruction manual by hand. I need to get to what I can do with those instructions. And so for the job market specifically, if I were interviewing, I'd ask people, what interesting things have you solved with AI and why? And what I'm looking for is the creativity of how they brought that tool, treating it as a tool, brought that tool to the table to help them be better at what they were trying to do. They're not outsourcing their creativity. They're not outsourcing their problem solving. They're using it to help give them a springboard into being better at the thing that they're trying to be good at. It's not a replacement for getting the work done. It is a replacement for that first 10 or 15% when you're kind of stumbling around and not really knowing what you're doing, to help you get aligned, to help you care about, help you understand what matters and what doesn't, and then focus on the things that do matter. Like I said, the thing that I use it a lot for is to help me expand my horizons and fill my blind spots. I don't know everything about everything. I don't try to, but I do understand when I go to interface with a problem I've never interfaced with before. I've got giant blind spots. Help me understand where my blind spots are. Ask me questions and let me answer the questions. And then I can be better at the things that I need to be better at. So I think from the job force perspective, it is going to allow us to unlock a lot of human creativity that we're spending on repetitive things. But I think that's a natural evolution of IT and a natural evolution of industry. For the incoming students, if you're not good at AI, go take some courses, go do some reading, go do some prompt engineering classes, and don't show up trying to treat it like a search engine. Show up with an example of how you harness the energy of this thing in a way that it was designed to be used. It's agentic, it's action. It's not just, help me answer this one question. It's help me answer these 10 questions in a succession based on the previous answer. Go 2 levels deep, 5 levels deep, 10 levels deep.
My journey with using AI have a spreadsheet right now. I have about 60 or 65 AI tools that I use for different things. And a lot of it is just playing around with stuff. I like to create visuals of impact, and I like to like help tell the story and the mission of what we're doing at the academy through that way. It's a fun extracurricular activity for me to spend a few hours on a Saturday exploring my next tool. I recently I muppified a team that we went on a conference. I adopted the viral trend of creating my own action figure. I had people asking me how I created my action figure. I had people sharing with me their action figure, which was an action figure fail because they did not know that it wasn't as simple as cut and pasting a prompt into one tool. I had to use 5 tools to make that animated toy action figure. You know what I mean? And I think that kind of illustrates what you're talking about, which is being able to understand the problem or what you're trying to solve or do, achieve, being able to piece together tools to create what that end solution looks like. And it takes another level of like complexity, I think, when it comes to what we're talking about AI, to really understand the full extent of how you can get value out of that one tool, but being able to apply it to whatever the requirement is that you started off with, embarking on leveraging AI. And so I'm fascinated by that. And I think for a lot of our students, what you hit on resonates with me because my first few years in the industry was creating decks, listening to calls, taking meeting minutes, a lot of things that are now being tapped into and leveraging AI. The note taking made me familiar with acronyms in the industry. It provided me understanding of context around what business objectives were and why we were doing these changes in production. And then putting decks together allowed me to have real-time feedback and criticism and editing and refining and coming up with a final product. Those things still need a lot of that human touch that you mentioned, because to be
Mhm.
honest, every time I use ChatGPT for fun, I have to revise some things. Sometimes the
Mhm.
sources are incorrect or they mistakenly pulled the wrong company. When I met one brand, they got another brand because they were closely named but not the same. And so there always has to be that human interaction and oversight. And so, to your point, I think people need to keep that, not just our students, but people in general need to keep that in mind because I know a lot of folks are saying, AI is coming for our jobs, but what it's doing is making us more efficient. It's creating more opportunity as I see it in the future, definitely. But now for even entrepreneurs, you mentioned the grocery scenario, and in my head I'm like, does that not exist, Billy? I might come to you with a proposal, a pitch for some innovation because I could create
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
and maybe have it linked up into my public shopping app. Because right now I haven't been to the grocery store in quite some time, but I'm like, man, there has to be a way to plug in historical data of what your family likes, maybe even have some sort of application where every family member can review the meals that they had. Do they like it?
Mhm.
They may not want to tell mom, but they'll tell the app.
Mhm.
And then now I can
Mhm.
maturely build a predictive model based on what the family likes to eat. It's just so exciting. And for a lot of our students, I want them to feel that it's an exciting time to be working and thriving and trying to build in this industry. You're nodding your head. So I assume you agree with
Absolutely.
me at all points. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it is an exciting time because there are new problems we can solve that we haven't been able to solve before. And I think we're just scratching the surface of that. And I really do emphasize that it's not a search engine. It is a much more powerful tool that you have to bring different types of problems to. And that's the crux of the whole conversation is what problem are you solving? Sometimes it is the search engine you need, but sometimes it's a deeper, more complex problem that chat-based LLM, an agent, an action model are going to be better suited if you show up in an interface with them the right way. If you ask about the right things and you prompt in an intelligent way that gives enough context, enough intent that they can go do what you need them to do. There are some really interesting new problems emerging in the world that we can start to interface with and potentially solve.
You mentioned earlier just a couple of recommendations for students, taking classes. There's a lot of free resources. You can even pay for certifications. I actually attended a free AWS conference where they had some quadrants or some sections where people can actually get certifications leveraging AI and AWS. And so I'm like, there's so much out there. And for some of our students who aren't as familiar with AI, where do they start in your opinion, or what should they look to do? I mean, there's still a few weeks left in the summer before fall semester starts, so some can get started now, but what are your recommendations?
So I think I start this conversation every time with curiosity is let your own personal curiosity drive you. Because if I give the exact things I'm looking at, they're going to just follow my path. I'm really curious about certain aspects of this. So I'll go down hour-long YouTube holes, right? I'll just click one video and I'll watch it. And then the sidebar is like, oh, that one looks interesting. That one looks interesting. That one, and kind of ask, tell me about large language models. And then I'll watch an hour's worth of large language models, and that will open up context. That'll open a path to model context protocol, agent to agent communications, end to end, make, and it really does expand my horizons when I kind of allow that curiosity rabbit hole to just drive. That's what I do, is just let my curiosity drive, because then I can bring my own personal interest to bear when my team is going to bring their own interest to bear. Then we've got a broader set of perspectives. Coursera's got a bunch of really interesting classes. There are a lot of interesting prompt engineering classes on YouTube that are free. I don't think you necessarily need to spend any money to get good at AI right now. And to be honest, the AI gets pretty good at teaching you how to do it if you ask the right thing. And so that's my recommendation when somebody asks, how do I go get good at AI? It's like, which part are you curious about? Go search for that. And then let the rabbit hole guide you a little bit, because there are going to be things that you don't know exist and wouldn't know to ask about, wouldn't know to search for, that you're going to discover in that rabbit hole. And that can help. Oh, I don't like that, or I've already know that, and let you pop out of the rabbit hole and try another way. There are lots and lots of courses, but for me, curiosity and the way you interface with the world and the way you get interested about things is the easiest way to learn how to use AI.
No, that's great input there. And I definitely have taken steps to integrate that into my pattern for learning AI as well. Just from a Go Studio perspective, I'm just curious because I know some of the incredible work that you guys have done and are continuing to do in the terms of AI. What makes you excited about the things that you guys have assisted or are assisting companies that are continuing to innovate on how they provide the best class service for their customers, whether it be in financial services or like you mentioned in any industry. They're all becoming tech companies, and they're all under pressure, I think, to provide whatever best in class looks like, which is transforming every single day. What makes you excited about all of this and our discussion today?
I am really excited about how rapidly things are going to change. I have innovation in my title, and so change is part of what I do. Ambiguity is part of what I do. And I think that there's a world in front of us right now with 1,000 question marks with answers for very little of those questions. And I'm excited by that. I think that we all have a part to play in answering the questions. What is AI culturally? What is AI from an ethics and responsibility perspective? What is AI for the growth of our children? What is AI for the maturity of our industries? And I don't think we have answers for most of that. And I'm really excited to be part of a very, minor piece of trying to solve some of the industry-wide problems, but I'm really excited that we get to be here at a time and place where we see it evolve and we get to be a part of how it matures.
That's a great way to close out this conversation. Obviously, for our audience, which is such a diverse group of people, continuing to be curious, leveraging all of the resources that you mentioned. It is so easy to get access to information in this day and age. And I constantly tell people, you can really just go out and look for it. And I love how you broke down kind of components within AI that people can research, like prompt engineering being a keyword that we hear but maybe not appreciate, because it is a language. And even though it's not a coding language, it is a language that is helping facilitate an input. For you to get the desirable output, you need to know how to talk to it. So I love that you highlighted that. And then also the fact that the industry is moving at a more rapid pace more now than ever. And it also gives an opportunity for people to be able to make an impact. There's opportunities all around. And so it's up to us to take advantage of those opportunities, to your point. So I hope that everyone listening in is left with that words of wisdom from Billy. I think there's also an opportunity for this generation to influence, which is another thing that you also mentioned, is influencing the trajectory and the solutions that are being developed and are dependent on or integrating with AI. The responsible AI component is something that I know a lot of folks in the next gen kind of area are very passionate about too. And so there's opportunities there as well. So thank you all for listening in. Thank you, Billy, for joining us today. And I really appreciate your insights. We will be sharing his information as well as Go Studios in the show notes for this particular podcast. I recommend that you follow him and the Go Studio organization out on LinkedIn. And we'll also have their website there for you to look into what they are offering and some of their resources as well. But keep tuned for another podcast episode as we dive into other fintech related topics. Look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Bye.